Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Ask Mary Anything Within Reason. You know the drill. It's Sunday, which means that tomorrow is going to be insane because it's Monday, and that's what we have to expect from Mondays these days. Anyway, a thing or two happened last week, so I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to ask. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be what happened last week. It can be about what happened at any point. It doesn't even have to be about politics. In fact, I encourage you to ask non-political questions because I think we could all use a break. All right, let's dive in. Let's start with Bruce. Question. We've heard about your grandfather, Fred. Could you tell us about your Scottish grandmother, Mary, please? And just for those of you who aren't aware, Bruce isn't asking, tell us about your Scottish grandmother, comma, Mary, please. My Scottish grandmother's first name was Mary. Yeah, it was very confusing because both of my grandmothers were named Mary. And I had the same, obviously, I was Mary Trump, as was my grandmother, although she was Mary McLeod Trump and her middle name was Anne. My Scottish grandmother was the youngest of 10. She grew up in the Outer Hebrides, which is a group of very, very small islands 40 miles off the northwest coast of Scotland. She was born in 1912, so you can imagine what it must have been like out there on the Isle of Lewis. She grew up in a village called Tongue, and the capital of Lewis is Stornoway. Yeah, so youngest of 10. Her dad was a crofter and a fisherman. They lived in 2 attached crofts because there were so many of them. And I had the great fortune of visiting Lewis back in the early 90s. I still have family there. My dad has first cousins who live there. And it was one of the most amazing trips I've ever had in my life. I literally just showed up. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was close. I was young, and I think I was there for 3 or 4 days in May, and it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. There are far more sheep than people, which is kind of nice if you like sheep, which I do. One of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen, like this pristine white sand. The water, however, is about 40 degrees, so don't swim. And again, it was May, but the weather was just amazing. It was just the whole thing was beautiful. And it was interesting to see where my grandmother came from, although very difficult to imagine what it must have been like 100 years earlier. I mean, I guess at that point it would have been 80 years earlier. But despite the fact that she grew up, I mean, they weren't poor, but it was not an easy life. She came over to the States. Her 2 of her older sisters were already here. And I think they were both married already. And my grandmother got a job working for Andrew Carnegie's widow at their mansion on Park Avenue on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And then, sadly, she met my grandfather at a dance. And allegedly, my grandfather was living with his mom, Elizabeth, at the time. Everybody in my family has the same names. It's Mary, Elizabeth. My Aunt Marianne was Marianne. And if you're a man, it was Fred or Malcolm or Donald or, very limited imagination. So in fact, when they're first born, my Aunt Marianne was born, my grandfather said to my grandmother, well, if it had been a boy, it would have been named after me. So why don't we name this one after you? So anyway, it took them 5 years. It was 5 years before they got married. I do not know why. I thought it was a little odd. My grandfather was already kind of up and coming. So it meant 5 more years of my grandmother's being a domestic servant, I think. But they got married, and then she took to her new station in life quite well. So it turns out, I mean, my grandmother did not have an easy life. My grandfather, as I've said many times, was a sociopath. But turns out they had some stuff in common. My grandmother had all sorts of issues. She wasn't a sociopath, but she had lots of personality disorders and wasn't a very kind person in the end. I was very close with her after my dad died. I worked very hard on that relationship, and yet Yet she was a real Trump at heart, because really the only thing that she thought made people worth anything was how much money they had. So, in case you think I'm exaggerating, the last thing my grandmother ever said to me, because after my grandfather died, I got completely disinherited, which sucked. So, I was, like, weighing my options because it seemed wildly unfair, and my grandmother found out that I was weighing my options, and, she was very upset with me, and, she wanted me to fix it, and she wanted me to make sure that I didn't do anything I shouldn't do, and then the very last thing she said to me, we never spoke again after this, was, and remember, she was talking about my dad, but she was also talking about her son, who died at 42. She said, "You know what your father was worth when he died? A whole lot of nothing." That was Gam. So, see? Like attracts like, I guess. Sorry, that went on for longer than it should have. Oh, I went the wrong way. Here we go. Gone hiking. Question. Was Donald's current extreme mistreatment of his base foreseeable given his relationship with his father? Does it feed his power trip? Yeah, totally foreseeable. He has nothing but contempt for these people. But it also is it's a sign of how desperate he is. Because as I've said many times, the one thing Donald most wants is to be loved, and the one thing he never will be is loved. So, all the money, all the power, all of the adulation, the fact that there is any adulation is kind of mind blowing. But, the more he realizes it isn't enough because it's the wrong thing. Like, his base loves him, but he doesn't, that's not what he needs, right? Because he has contempt for them. They are not his people. So, you know, the more he finds that out, the more he hates them, but the more he needs them, because they're literally the only people right now who are supporting him. Like, there's some sycophants surrounding him, but most of the people surrounding him are there because they want access to power, and they want to use him towards their own ends. And I mean, I don't honestly. I mean, I guess you could say that it feeds his ego, such as it is. But I think it's definitely a double-edged sword, and I think the way his base feels about him, um, kind of dredges up his own feelings of lack of self-worth and self-loathing. So I don't think it actually is good for him at all, which means it's not good for us. All right. Philip, question. Why does Scribbleface, that's new for me. Why does Scribbleface want to go back to a pre-1913 world? Does he not understand that 1945 to 1975, the Rooseveltian New Deal was the golden age of capitalism? He doesn't know that, first of all. No, I mean, pre-1913, Donald wants two things. He wants the golden age of the robber baron, not the golden age of capitalism that worked for all Americans, because, all of that socialism. So he wants the robber baron golden age plus pre-1860s America, where people were still enslaved and women had no rights. And white men, landed wealthy white men, could do whatever they want with impunity. That's what's going on here. He's being enabled at every turn. Isabel 801, question. Can his childhood trauma ever be solved? Is there any chance of redemption coming from his realization that he is hurting people? No, and no, which is a terrible thing to say about another human being. But one of the simplest ways to describe to you how horrible my grandparents were as human beings and parents is to say that they had 5 children, and every single one of them was a destroyed human being. And I don't mean damaged. Most of us are damaged. I mean, and many of you aren't. I'm not including people who aren't damaged, but many people are. Not that I'm talking about myself, of course. They had 5 children, Every single one was a destroyed human being. There is no redemption here. There is nothing that could be solved. Donald has had severe, untreated psychiatric disorders for decades, and nobody has any interest in helping him. He's unaware of his illnesses, and there's no redemption for him. I mean, so there's no chance that could ever be solved. He's way too far gone, first of all. And as for the redemption, you cannot be redeemed unless you seek redemption. As far as he's concerned, he's right about everything. He's not doing anything wrong. For what would he need to be redeemed? Nothing. And there's no goodness left in him. There was a long time ago, but it's been completely eradicated. He is a person who, again, is always right. So, like, you don't seek help if you think you're right about everything. Although, and again, not diagnosing him, but technically speaking, like if you're a clinical psychologist or some kind of therapist and a raging narcissist walks into your office for treatment, their presenting problem is the rest of the world. They're fine. It's the rest of the world that's the problem. So he is a cruel person who gets joy from humiliating and harming other people, especially people who are extremely vulnerable and have very little power. So no, there's no coming back from any of that, sadly, because we're the ones paying for it. Triple Henke question. Even if you are hardcore Trump right wing and support him in everything, how could his colleagues, family, and friends not admit that he is tacky, vulgar, embarrassing, and ridiculous? Because why? They don't care about him, right? You would have to care about him to say, let me rephrase. They don't care about him, and they care about their own self-interest. So they know him well enough to know that he does not respond to criticism well. He doesn't like to be critiqued. He doesn't like to be told he's wrong. So if you see him and his makeup looks terrible or his hair looks bad, and look, we all have bad hair days. We all have bad makeup days. It's like there's nothing wrong with somebody saying, hey, you missed a spot, right? Nobody's going to do that. One, because he'll react terribly. And two, he'll punish them. And they don't care about him. So they're certainly not going to say that about any of his troubling behaviors. And again, I guess on some level, this is sad and it would have saved all of us a lot of pain, but nobody even cares enough about him to get him help. And as I just mentioned, it's way too late for that to happen either. So, Barbara, question. What do you think NATO's response will be if Donald attempts to take Greenland through military force? Well, there's only one appropriate response, given that they're members of NATO. They would have to rally behind NATO and act accordingly. They would have to get boots on the ground and protect Denmark, which is their NATO ally, and Denmark's territory, Greenland. However, I think it's extraordinarily unlikely that it's going to be a military operation. I think that Donald is going to try other things for a while: bribery, threats, blackmail, the stuff that's in his wheelhouse. It's not going to work, obviously, and that will make him more frustrated. But again, I don't know what's going to happen. I think, again, a military force is highly unlikely, but it's very clear. Like, I don't remember which article of the NATO agreement. I apologize, but it's in the bylaws of NATO. If a member country or a member country territory is invaded, all of the other members of NATO have to respond in kind. That is what happened after September 11th. The only NATO country that has ever invoked that article, whatever number it is, I apologize again, was America after September 11th, and every single one of our allies responded. Every single one. The allies we are now turning our backs on, the allies we are now slapping with unconscionable tariffs. And, our allies whom we are trying to weaken by dismantling the Western alliance, the post-World War II Western alliance. Ms. Marcian. Good day, Mary. Good day to you as well. Question. I just heard the report from White House Walter Reed on Donald's great results. Is it truth or lies? Thank you. Let me think. Yeah, it's all bullshit. They're not going to tell us the truth about his health one way or the other. You know what? I actually don't know who the White House physician is now. But remember the good old days of Ronnie Jackson, who's now a representative in Texas? That guy, that creepy guy. I think he was probably drinking buddies with Pete Hegseth. Probably still is. When Ronnie Jackson was the White House physician, he would come out and with a straight face tell us that Donald, who I think he used to be like 6'2", but clearly isn't any longer. And again, I don't know how to ballpark people's weights, but told us some absurd lie that Donald weighed like what an Olympic athlete would weigh of his height. I mean, it was just so obviously false, but clearly Donald didn't want people knowing how tall he is and how much he weighed. So his doctor lied to the American people. And what else did he lie about? Oh yeah, not a lie exactly, but I could be wrong. I think this was what you would call an exaggeration. He told us that Donald was the healthiest president and that he wouldn't be surprised if he lived to be 200. Now, that's alarming. We are a long-lived people, which I guess is good for me. But, I mean, in only one respect, honestly. But yeah, my grandfather lived to be almost 93. My grandmother lived to be 89. And that was far too long. So the idea of Donald sticking around for another 122 years is just beyond bearing. So no, these people just lie. Donald tells them what to say, and they say it, which is not how things are supposed to go. Like, why even bother getting the tests or saying anything publicly about them? Because it's all a show. Stephen, question. How do you feel about breaking up the union to smaller countries, Mary? Well, that's interesting. I think we should. I just don't think it's possible. One of the very, very first times. Oh, quick note. Captain Sean Barbarella is the White House physician, and he too, I know this will shock you, is a sycophant who will say whatever he's told to say. That just came to me spontaneously, as I'm sure you're aware. Those facts. Okay. So one of the very first times I was interviewed by Molly Jong-Fast, I honestly, it was in advance of the 2020 election. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but she said, it's so obvious that America is really 5 countries. It should be 5 completely separate countries. It's too big. It's too, the ways in which the regions are different are too jarring. We cannot be a cohesive whole under the especially not with the kind of government we have now. I'm saying that. So yeah, it's a shame actually in some ways that we didn't figure that out sooner, because it's very difficult to see how this all hangs together. But then there are problems, right? Let's say, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. I think it's highly unlikely that anything like this would happen. But let's say Texas decided to secede from the union because, well, just a bunch of woke liberal idiots. Well, there are a lot of people in Texas who are also woke liberal idiots and would rather be in the same country with New York and California than Texas. So what do we do? Just leave them? It's like the same dilemma. I mean, not to the same degree, obviously, but the Civil War, well, do you just let the South secede? Well, no, because They're millions of enslaved people. We can't just leave them knowing what's going to happen to them. So you fight a civil war. We allegedly won the Civil War, and then the fucking North lost the Civil War all over again. So we just don't know how to do things properly. And I don't know how this plays out, but nothing. Yeah, I mean, I guess the simplest way to put it is none of our options, even good ones, seem viable, and that's a very problematic place to be. So let's just focus on getting out of this particularly horrific situation we're in right now. I think is the way to go about it, and then we'll just see how things are when we get there. Radio Duran's question. I wanted to ask about Bill Maher's visit with Donald. Bill portrayed Donald as a normal person who is playing the role like a professional wrestler. Is this it or the normal person a facade? Bill Maher is a scumbag. I'm sorry, was I not clear? Let me be more clear. Bill Maher's shtick got really old about 20 years ago. He's not a liberal. I've never in my life understood why people on the left like him, or he's also not funny. He's a virulent Islamophobe. He's a misogynist. He's kind of stupid, and he platforms the worst people. He's a thin-skinned bully too. Maybe that's why he likes Donald. They have that in common. I don't care what Bill Maher has to say about anything, and I can only imagine what his incentive is to lie so shamefacedly about Donald. Okay, this is. I'll try to make this clear. In psychology, the psychological theory, there are people have a true self and a false self, right? And obviously, it's better to be your true self. And people are their false self when they are struggling, when they have certain serious personality disorders or what have you. And I'm sorry, I'm really oversimplifying it, but I mean the point is, most of the time, we want to be our true self, as hard as that may be. Donald Trump is nothing but false self. He's so psychologically damaged. There's nothing real of him left anymore. So the idea that he's playing a role is such complete and utter bullshit. And either Bill Maher believes that, which just shows you what an idiot he is, or he's making it up, which just proves what a grifter he is. So something has to have been in it for him. Don't listen to him. His opinion is absolutely worthless. I hope I was clear. Bruce, question. Do you think Donald was behind the downfall of Leona Helmsley? No, I think Leona Helmsley was behind the downfall of Leona Helmsley. I think it's likely that she probably got into the kind of trouble she did because she's a woman. I mean, you can't tell me that Donald and my grandfather weren't pulling the same kind of shit, or other, big real estate developers in New York City. But no, I mean, I don't really remember. I mean, obviously they knew each other. I may have met her. I don't know. It's a long time ago. But yeah, she pulled a lot of tax fraud stuff and didn't pay taxes, like lots and lots of taxes. So no, that was her. I don't know, maybe other people might have been behind it, but I don't think Donald would have bothered. Nor did he need to. Pen by Moonlight. Question. If we were living in a Star Trek universe, if only, when would you pick to live, and would you have joined Starfleet? And thanks for your network of shows. It really helps me sort everything out. Well, let's start with the last thing. You're very, very welcome. We're very glad that it helps you sort. It actually helps us sort stuff out too, in the process of sorting it out. So that's great. We love to hear that. If we're living in a Star Trek universe, when would you pick to live, and would you have? I absolutely would have joined Starfleet. I would have liked to join as a science officer, but I'm not good enough at the science. So, I mean, it's mostly my math that are not good enough. Um, I don't know. Yeah, wouldn't mind having my own starship. But which Star Trek universe? You know what? I am fond of the original. I mean, yeah, I'm not. I like the stuff that takes place in the Kelvin universe, but I prefer. I'm an OG person. Um, I really am. So I would have that's where I'd go because you know what? When it started, like one of the things I always loved about Star Trek was that it was structured. Like I desperately need I crave structure as a kid, so I loved the fact that it was structured, but it wasn't militaristic. Like they were there not to. And again, it was imperfect, and all sorts of things happened. Yes, I'm aware, but the mission wasn't to conquer; it was to explore. And it was to learn new things and meet new species and coexist and just discover and be better. I love that about Star Trek. I learned so much from Star Trek without knowing it. I was little when I started watching it. But just about inclusivity and um, open-mindedness and diversity and you know Ahura was like my first. I did I'm not idol's the wrong word, but the first woman. I admired her so deeply. It was Lieutenant Uhura and Shirley Chisholm. So, um, you know, that was really cool. And just the way they all got along and worked things out so yeah, that's where I would that's what I where I would wind up. All right, Trish, question. Did Don ever have a friend? How did he treat them? What ended the friendship? He didn't really. My dad was about 7.5 years older, and my dad had a lot of friends, and my dad's friends adored him. He was, for a while, a great guy, and he was fun, he was funny, he was smart, he was outgoing, he was kind, he was sensitive, he was generous, all that stuff. Like all the kind of stuff you would want in a friend, unless you're Donald and my grandfather, in which case those things, who wants any of that? The other thing about my dad is that he was an excellent yachtsman and a pilot. So, you know, he'd like fly his friends like in his own, not, he'd charter a plane and he'd fly his friends out to Montauk, and then he'd take them out on his boat and they go fishing and then have clam bakes or whatever. So because Donald was so much younger, my grandmother would sometimes force my dad to take Donald with them. And as Donald got older and even worse, like more belligerent, more cocky, more obnoxious, my dad's friends could not stand him. And yet they put up with it because, Freddie's little brother, we want to be good friends to Freddie, so it's okay. Um, and I think my dad referred to Donald as, he would say to his friends, "Hey guys, I'm really sorry, but I have to bring my pain in the ass little brother with us." And in fact, by the time Donald was a teenager, my dad had what I think is the perfect nickname for him, the Great I Am. But as he got older, like nobody wanted to be around him anymore because he was such a. I was going to say something I shouldn't say. Just so obnoxious and condescending and superior. So as then as now, like his friendships were just all transactional. It was people who felt that they could get something out of him, or you know, he felt he could get something out of. But no, he's never had a deep, really emotional connection in his life, which is. It would be sad if he weren't such a hideously horrible person. So it's not sad. It's exactly what he deserves. Brent, thank you so very much, as always. Question: how did Grandpa collect rent from 49 buildings? Well, for a while, he had my dad and Donald doing it. They would literally go around from apartment to apartment and just pick up an envelope full of cash. Separate. So later on, I assume that they got a normal system where people sent in checks and stuff. Also interesting though, because 49 buildings. It's a lot of buildings. So I'm sure they had other people, like, every building, because I lived in one of my grandfather's buildings. I live at the Highlander in Jamaica, Queens, on 164th Street and Highland Avenue, if you guys ever want to check it out. Don't. So, every building had a superintendent who probably did some of the rent collection. But every building also had a very large laundry because these were large buildings. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head how many units there were, but they were like, my building was 9 floors and it probably had 20 apartments per floor or something like that. So there was a big laundry room, and laundry, took dimes and quarters. That adds up. So my grandmother would get into her pink Cadillac wearing her fox fur stole, and she would go from building to building. I'm sure she couldn't do it all in one day. And she would collect all of the coins from the laundry machines. Yeah. Seems like a good use of somebody's time, although it was probably a lot of money. They were very deeply weird, awful people. Gabriel, comment: of course the doctor said he was in perfect health. Best laugh I've had all week. Nothing about a mental status exam either. No, they can't give him an MME because he wouldn't be able to remember something he said 5 minutes ago. I don't even know if he's oriented in time and space anymore. So no, they cannot risk that at all. They cannot risk another man, woman, person, TV, camera moment, because you would probably get that wrong. Melissa, hi, Mary. You're amazing and help preserve my sanity. Thank you very much. That's extraordinarily kind of you. Question: why doesn't Donald stay at Mar-a-Lago full time? He hates the White House and called it a dump. Well, I think one, because by going back and forth, he gets to fly on Air Force One and waste millions and millions of dollars in taxpayer money, which is something he seems to enjoy tremendously. And two, I mean, I'm making an assumption because I don't know. I guess he doesn't have to go back to the White House, but I assume there are some things that can only be done in the White House. I don't know. I think one thing he does like is the sort of pomp and circumstance of the White House, like when heads of state come to visit. But I agree with you. Like, why not just stay down there? And again, I think it's just about ego, such as it is. Terry, question: do you have a favorite breed of dog? Okay, full disclosure, I'm a cat person. I've always had cats. Cats get me. But I love all animals. So obviously I love dogs too. I've just never had one. My favorite kind of dog is the rescued kind. That's my favorite kind of any animal that becomes a pet. The rescued kind. So, yeah. And I'm looking forward to having a dog someday, perhaps in the not too distant future. Christopher, question. Oh, first of all, thank you so much, Christopher. I almost skipped past that part. It's very kind of you. Question: I keep hearing stuff brewing about how Al Green will be soon filing articles of impeachment against Donald, Have you heard about this? And what are your thoughts about this if you have? I actually thought he had already. And great. I think everybody in the House of Representatives who's sane should be filing articles of impeachment against Donald, and they should make the case against him. There are so many. It's not going to go anywhere because the Republicans still have their razor thin majority. However, that's a majority that can be overturned at any. There are 538 representatives in the House of Representatives, which means that literally only 2 Republicans need to retire or get sick, or they could lose a special election, whatever the case. And Hakeem Jeffries is Speaker of the House. So actually I don't hope somebody gets too sick or dies, but I hope something happens so that Democrats do take the majority, because I'm worried about 2026. Oh, by the way, just a fact check. Thank you, Mercedes. I guess he's been talking. Al Green's been talking about it for a while. It just assumed to happen. He says he's going to present the articles of impeachment within the next 30 days as of April 5th. So something to look forward to. Oh, there we go. Debbie. Hi, Mary. Thank you for all that you do. You're quite welcome. We actually love doing it. So we appreciate your appreciation. Question. Do you have any hobbies that you like to do in your spare time? I do. I don't have much spare time. I don't think reading is a hobby. Reading is sort of like a way of life. But some people consider it a hobby. I've been really kind of swamped lately, but things I like to do, haven't been doing and plan to do again. Play the guitar, not particularly well, but I love doing it. I was at one point a sort of fanatical tennis player. I love playing tennis, and I love shooting archery, and I love traveling. And I don't really consider these things hobbies. These are also just things I like to. I love going to museums, and just being out in New York. So thank you for asking. Yeah, it's good to get the non-political questions on occasion. Jaded92, question. Do you know if a large print version of Too Much and Never Enough will be released? My library said there isn't one yet. Well, that's wrong. I'm actually a little bit surprised about that. I think that's the least they could have done. What? That's absurd. If there's not, I apologize, and there's no reason to doubt your librarian. And I'll look into that, because I just think that's ridiculous. I guess the alternative is to get the what's called ebook, because you can change font size, but not everybody likes to read ebooks. I don't particularly. And 2, not everybody has a device on which that can be done. So thank you for that. I will look into it. Railvin, thank you very much for that. It's very kind. Question, is Melania just as personality disordered as Donald? I don't know her. I met her once. No, wait. I met her once, and I was in the same place with her once. Meeting her was fun. Yeah, she's just, you can imagine she's deep. No, I met her at Donald's apartment in Trump Tower. They were dating, and this was in the late 90s. So yeah, they weren't married yet. And I showed up early, which is a mistake that I had never made in my life before, and a mistake I would never make again. So it was just the 3 of us hanging out in the foyer in that hideous apartment of his. So, Donald and I were reminiscing and talking and chatting and whatever. And she just sat there and smiled vapidly. And she said one word the whole time. Donald was telling her the story of how I dropped out of college, which is a true story. But then he had to embellish, and he told her I dropped out because I had hit bottom, and I was doing drugs. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not true, because it's not. And that was the only time Melania actually perked up and she said, "Really?" And I said, "No." But, Donald likes a good comeback story, even if it's not his own. And he needed to, one, he needed to make me look as bad as possible. And two, he needed to make himself look better because not long after that, he hired me to write his second book. So he's like, look, even though she was a total disaster and taking all sorts of drugs, I lifted her up and gave her a job. And then he had his publisher fire me. So I'm not sure how much good that would have done me. I don't know if she's personality disorder, but she's horrible. She's just there. She knew exactly who he was when she married him. She's just as bad. All transactional. But I got a good story out of it. So, spicy autist. Question. Why is Donald so scared of being referred to as just Donald? Is it because there is no Donald, really just the inflated Trump persona? Because if somebody calls you by your first name, they're what's suggestive is that you're on the same level, and he thinks he's above everybody. So he feels demeaning to him. I don't think it's because he hates his name. It's because he hates people who use his name. By the way, though, that's not why I use his name. I mean, I'm happy. Like, that's an ancillary benefit. I'm thrilled that it bothers him. Okay. Forget it. Donald's children were totally different gender. They're like so much younger than I am. So basically, when I was growing up, it was the oldest grandchild, which was my grandmother, Marianne's son, David, my brother, and I. It was it. We were the three grandchildren. That was it. I was the youngest for like 12 years. So we grew up together, and there's Marianne was Aunt Marianne. Like, we always called her Aunt Marianne. My dad, for David, was Uncle Freddie. Elizabeth was 4 years younger than my dad, in the middle, and we called her Liz or Elizabeth. And Donald was Donald, and Robert was Robert. I called Donald Donald because I called him that my entire life. It would be bizarre for me to call him anything else. And I'm glad he hates it. I'm glad he feels insulted and demeaned by it, even though it's just his flippin' name. Charles, hi. Hello. Question. Did Donald mention America first when you were young, or just for 2015? Thanks. No, he was not. He had no interest in politics. I mean, he was interested in New York politics, but only for the benefit of getting favors from powerful political people. He couldn't care less about politics. He still can't. It's just an avenue for him to enrich himself and gain power. I'd never heard of anything like America First before in my life. And he probably hadn't either. Somebody just told him to say it, and it stuck. And here we are. CBB, question. Mary, do you think there is anyone in Donald's current rank and file administration that will stand up for us like there was in the first go around? Absolutely not. They have spent the last 8 years, since 2020, no, actually probably since 2016. The people surrounding Donald now have worked very hard to make sure he is surrounded by the worst sycophants, the worst enablers, and the worst of the worst, period. There is not one person left who would dare. And that includes the entirety of elected Republicans in Congress, and it's grotesque, and it's dangerous. No, there's not one person. It's going to have to be somebody from outside of all of it. Max, question. What are your predictions for the 2026 midterms, assuming we have them? Let's start with that assumption. Yes, let's assume that we're going to have them. My predictions are that the Democrats will win back the House, overwhelmingly, and it won't be easy because Republicans are going to try all sorts of stuff. But that's what, if there are elections, that's what will happen. The Senate map is harder. However, things are so bad right now, and people know exactly who to blame. The Democrat in the Wisconsin State Supreme Court race won handily, At the same time, there were 2 special elections in Florida, both very, very safe Republican seats that were the special elections, which replaced 2 Republican representatives in Congress whom Donald had moved into his cabinet. And even though Republicans won both of those races, their margin of victory was half what Donald's was. So the signs are good for Democrats, but we have to make 2 assumptions. One, that things are going to keep getting worse, that the Trump regime is going to keep making things worse, which it will, and that Democrats, I'm less confident about this, Democrats will learn how to exploit all of this. Yeah. Man from the West 420, question. Was that Donald dancing on the old show Soul Train from the 70s? There's a video on YouTube supposedly of him on that show dancing. Thanks, Mary. I don't know, and I have to be honest with you, I don't want to see it. Eesh. I hope not. What would Donald be doing on Soul Train anyway? Wow. It's disturbing. Lizzie Beth, question. If we consider that it's not what's wrong with him, but what's wrong with us, then we put up with him, how do we fix it? How do we fix our society? Yeah, it is us. It's absolutely us. I mean, it's not all of us, obviously. It's not even most of us, but it's enough of us. 74 million people voted for this vile monster in 2024, knowing everything that he's done, everything that he's capable of. It is us. How do we fix that? We've got to figure that out. I'm not a sociologist, but we need panels of experts from clinical psychologists and psychiatrists and neurologists and neuropsychiatrists and neuropsychologists and socialists and historians to figure this out. I mean, one thing we need to do is figure out as well who not to bother with, like the hardcore cultists, the white supremacists, the white nationalists. We can't bother with them. We need to contain them, which is what we used to do. But in terms of who we nurture, we pay attention to, people who maybe are finally opening their eyes. If they do, let's not. It's very hard not to judge them, but let's welcome them back into the fold. Let's not cast aspersions. Let's just say, good, thank you for waking up. Isn't being woke a wonderful thing? And then, of course, we need to shore up our base, which Democrats never do. And we have to start talking to the people who never vote, which would be the largest voting bloc or non-voting bloc. 80 million people did not vote in the 2024 election, knowing, well, I mean, not all of them knew this, but some of them should have, that it was literally a choice between democracy and fascism, not the price of eggs. Debbie, question. Do you think there will be any investigation into the insider trading? Would the Republicans have to agree to it? I think the Democrats there's an inspector general doing an investigation. I don't think it will matter. Like, there will be no consequences, despite the fact that the law was brazenly broken by many people, including Donald Trump. But I think it's worth letting the American people know what happened. So that's good. And again, if the Democrats do take over the House, there will be investigations. So let's get all of the evidence now before they disappear it. Marshall, I clicked the right super sticker. Thank you very, very much, Marshall. That's very kind of you. From Substack, Mary Hall, question. Do you think Donald will accomplish his Project 2025 agenda? He is accomplishing it. Everything he's doing right now is to the letter, following the fascist playbook known as Project 2025, which we knew about for the entire election, but many people didn't bother to pay attention. Diana, thank you very much, Diana. That's great. Mary, question. Do you feel that Donald will go one step too far, if that's possible, and be undermined and overthrown by those in his inner circle? No. It's not about if he goes too far. It's about if he becomes incapacitated in some way that they find embarrassing and untenable. So as long as he's of use to them, no, he's not going anywhere. They're not going to do anything. It would take a united effort But at the first sign that he has completely lost it, yeah, they'll 25th Amendment him in a heartbeat. Focus Lady, thank you very much for that. And your comment is thanks so much for sharing sensitive details about your family history for the sake of public education about psychology and sociology. You're very welcome. I kind of feel like it's the least I can do, especially given the fact that I'm the only person who can or will do it. And I think it's important for people to know this stuff. His Divine Scottu, thank you as always. Very much appreciated. Question: is there a way we the people can reaffirm our relationships with our foreign friends? I'm embarrassed. I don't know. I mean, what I do know is that many people understand that it is not all of us, that it's not all Americans who wanted this, but they have literally no reason to trust America. We elected this monster twice, and we did it knowing what he was going to do, and he's doing all of it. So that, I'm afraid, is a rift that will take decades to repair if it's reparable, and that's sad. What we can hope is that people in other countries will continue to understand that those of us that people like us feel terrible and did everything we could to make sure this didn't happen, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure it stops. So, right, guys. Champagne hand, Canadian in the house. Speaking of which, Canadians, hopefully forgiving us. You guys rock. We see, let's see. Question. We see brief flickers of cognitive dissonance in some of these toadies who perpetuate the lies. Regardless of where they fall in the loathsomeness spectrum, do you think we'll witness any mental breaks? I don't know. I mean, I think if anybody shows any signs of weakness, they will be fired, forced to resign, replaced with somebody more malleable or amenable. And I think most of them they love everything that's happening. They're fascists, and this is all good for them. So no, I don't think so. All right, from Substack, Roberta question: how do your books differ? Do they need to be read in order of how you wrote them, or could I just read the most recent one? Is the title "No One Will Ever"? Okay, interesting question. The first book I wrote is in July 20. It came out in July 2020. It's called "Too Much and Never Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man." It is what I consider the psychological history of my family. It gives you the background and how Donald became Donald. It explains his development, his history, his upbringing from a developmental psychological perspective, and from a clinical. I'm a clinical psychologist, which is why I was able to do that and felt comfortable doing that. I do not diagnose him because he was never my patient and never could be or should be. But I also explained that in his upbringing in the context of the two most powerful important relationships in his life as a child, which were with my grandfather and with my dad, who was the oldest son. So I mean, it depends what you look on. The second book, The Reckoning, which practically nobody knows exists, is about, my speculation that we got where we got as a country because we have failed miserably to reckon with our past, that we have never we've barely acknowledged, let alone atoned for, the two original sins upon which this country was founded: the genocide of the native populations and the kidnapping, enslavement, and torture and murder of an entire other population. Like, we have never, ever, obviously the white majority is what I'm talking about. The people in power have never acknowledged this, have never atoned for it. And it is why we continue to make the same mistakes we've been making for centuries. So, and I talk a bit about why Donald handled COVID the way he got. So I talk a little bit about the first Trump administration as well, but kind of in that context, and how we got here, what to do about it. My most recent book is called "Who Could Ever Love You?" It's an actual memoir. It's more about my family of origin with my mother and my father, and obviously, my relationship with my dad's family, because his family was really, I didn't have a relationship much at all with my mother's family, and I spent much of my childhood in my dad's parents' house. So I was much more influenced by those relationships, and obviously, they kind of my grandparents, and certainly Donald, and with some assist from the rest of the siblings, they kind of destroyed my dad. So, um, that was the story I wanted to tell. Uh, so there's no particular order; just depends which thing you're most interested in. But thank you for asking. Appreciate it. Stacy 3107 question: are we as women going to completely lose our right to vote because of Congress sycophants? Married women who have changed their names might, if the Save Act passes, because according to the Save Act, you have to show up. First of all, it imposes voter ID laws. Jim Crow, everybody. Yeah. Poll tax. So that's wrong on its face, but the ID you present has to match the name on the ID you present has to match the name on your birth certificate. So guess what? To whom that does not apply? Married women who've changed their names. So yeah, it's worrisome. It passed in the House with the help of 4 Democrats, all of whom need to be primaried stat. And unfortunately, I don't remember their names off the top of my head. Focus Lady, thank you so very much for that. Question: why do people who surround Donald as well as Donald identify with the aggressor and align themselves with anyone they perceive to be on top? Because they're extraordinarily weak people. They have serious psychopathologies, and they have no self-awareness, and they're just weak and afraid. Open Mind 1966. Question: Mary, do you see that through your uncle that narcissistic tendencies are becoming the norm because of your uncle in daily life, online and elsewhere? Well, I mean, not the norm, but I think people who share his psychopathologies feel empowered. Not just his psychopathologies, but his hatreds, his isms. They're all empowered now because the people who represent them are in power. So it makes sense that disease would metastasize, right? The disease of racism, the disease of white supremacy, the disease of misogyny and Islamophobia and homophobia, all of that stuff, because it's supported at the highest levels of government. So it's not that there are more people like that. It's just that more people like that are in positions of power. It's kind of scary. Whiskey Wench. Question: did Donald ever really want to be president, or was he just easily malleable by the likes of Bannon and Thiel? He didn't want to be. He wanted to win because losing is anathema to him. I still don't think he did win in 2016. But he never wanted the job. That's for sure. Not the first time. The second time around, in 2024, he wanted the job because he wanted to stay out of prison. Isn't that great? Isn't that a great ambition? That's what we need to tell our children. Anybody who wants to stay out of prison can be president of the United States of America. We're awesome. All right. I have some people to thank. I didn't realize how late it was. So I apologize. I'm not going to get to everybody's questions, but I will thank you. All right. Some super stickers. Regina, thank you so very much. That's very kind of you. Jacqueline, thank you as well. It's great. Tiger Claw 1269, thank you very, very much. AC, Canadian in the house. Thank you, Canada. Shashay, Shalabram, thank you very much. Voitex, CYVR, another Canadian. Thanks for everything you guys are doing, and thank you for that. Karen, thank you for that very kind gift. King of all whites, thank you very, very much. Valerie, thank you. Mary B444, thank you very much. It's very generous of you. Dodie, another super sticker. Thank you as always. That's great. Jana, thank you very much. Cheryl says, Nunya, New York business, FFO. Thank you very much for that. Cheryl, another Canadian. You guys are representing tonight. Thank you for that. Debbie, another super sticker. Thanks very much. So many feels. Thank you. Terry Rosa, very generous. Thanks very much for that. Jimmy, wow, Jimmy, that's incredible. Thank you. Very, very generous of you. Douglas, thank you very, very much for that. And I think that does it. We made it through last week, and now we're kicking off this week. I'm tired. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm going to sleep a lot because Mondays have been fun. All right. We actually, I think this is official. I just want to make sure before I, overstate it. Yep. We have officially reached 370,000 subscribers, which is very exciting. So thanks everybody for helping that happen. Just very quickly, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. It really helps, and we're really gunning for 400,000. I think that would be a great place for us to be. So it doesn't cost anything. Just click subscribe and then click on the bell icon, and you'll be alerted every time new videos drop. That other ways to support us: like and share our videos, comment on them. These not just the lives. We drop videos every day, and watching them, commenting on them, sharing them, that really helps us a lot. So thank you for doing all of those things. Of course, everybody watching on YouTube, everybody trying to watch over on Twitter, my awesome Substackers, great community over there. Everybody should go check that out. It's called The Good in Us on Substack. And of course, everybody listening to the podcast, we truly appreciate that. Again, all of our super stickers, everybody giving us gifts. Cannot tell you how much your support means to us. It's helping us tremendously grow and just get better. We want to be better at this so we can help you guys just navigate these extraordinarily complex times we're living in. Thanks, as always, to our phenomenal moderators who do a tremendous job of keeping this place safe, which is incredibly important to all of us. And to my amazing team who, I apologize that tomorrow's Monday. Mondays are tricky, but they are total pros, and they do all of this with extraordinary skill. And but tonight, mostly thank you to Mercedes, because she's the one running this thing. So everybody should thank her as well. All right, I think that does it for us, for me. I will be back, obviously, Monday through Friday, Mary Trump Live, every weeknight at 6 p.m. Eastern. We've got videos dropping every day, as I said. So please check those out. And just a programming announcement: Tuesdays Nerds is moving to 3 p.m. Eastern. We're trying something new. We think it'll be a better time for the nerds. So please check that out. I'm looking forward to that. But mostly I'm looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, everybody, please stay safe and be kind.